It's a real honor to be here with you all tonight. We do have some visuals, and I'll be sharing some information from the book, as well as give readers, people who are currently reading it or plan to read it or want to reread it, some common themes and some open-ended questions for y'all to think through as you're reading. This is just the tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of the amount of information that is in there. So I would be interested in hearing what your thoughts are after you do read it and think through some of these questions. I want to mention that there is a follow-up session on December the 10th. Is that right, Kelsey? Okay. Same time, same place, where we'll dig into these questions that we talk through tonight. So with that, I want to say welcome, Bean Digag. That means welcome all of you to this introduction to Chippewa City. What you see here is the Chippewa City football team. This was taken back in 1901, as well as a news clipping from the local paper at the time. And I want to include this because from here to there, Chippewa City as a place really was not very far away from Grand Marais, where I'm sitting now. But at times when I was working on this project, it seemed almost unreachable, like I was going back in time and exploring places and learning about people that I had never known and didn't know anything about. And so the great thing about history and documenting the past is that sometimes when people are there to record things, we know them many, many, many years later. And because of the great journalistic reporting of the local paper, I can tell you who all the men in the photograph are. So I'm going to share their names with you to start out. So the Chippewa City football team: Captain Wei Sky, John Zimmerman, Peter LaPlante, William LaPlante, Frank Frost, Peter Stevens, Leonce Majansen, Chaz Besso, and Vincent Lewis. And they played the Grand Marais football team that day. And thanks to local reporting and the magic of history, we know who the people are from that day and that time. When I was working on Walking the Old Road, one of my great helpers was my cousin, Bob Swanson. He is a double cousin, so I'm related to him through both the Anaquat family and the Drouillard family. And he is a poet and a writer, and he shared with me the idea of Bimad Ziadazukan, which is Anishinaabe belief and tradition that stories are living things. They are both considered to be live or animate and also inanimate, and stories or legends are a single item, but also something that lives. And in living, not only remains, but changes. And it's up to all of us to share and honor the words of the past and the present and the future, and honor them as we go. This view is of St. Francis Xavier Church from where the old road used to pass below. And so as you're looking at the photograph, facing the church, the lake would be behind you. And I always wondered before I started doing research why the door to the church didn't face the road. And it's because, of course, there was no road. It faced the lake. I always like to start with this array of words because there's some misconceptions, I think, generally about words for the people. And so some of you may know this or part of this, but I like to go through it as a good place to start. All of these words, Chippewa, Ojibwa, Ojibwe, Ojibwe, two spellings, and Anishinaabe, refer to the same tribe, group of people who live here in northeastern Minnesota, Ontario, Michigan, Wisconsin. The Anishinaabe people actually have many, many extended communities throughout the region. And you'll see these words used interchangeably depending on the source. In a lot of treaties, you'll see the word Chippewa used. Into the 70s and 80s, Ojibwe became more common. But traditionally, Anishinaabe is the preferred word for the people. And in the Ojibwe language, that actually means like spontaneous man or first man, like a instant human being. and you know, all through North America, and indigenous people all over the world have their own creation stories and legends, and it's unique to that tribe. And the creation stories are passed along in the oral tradition, and in the Ojibwe tradition, there's some relationship between the word Ojibwe and the word to write, which is Ojbi Ige. And so the origin of the words are somewhat contentious. And I just wanted to make the point that all of these words are interchangeable and what the preferred word is. And the word for this place, Grand Marais, is Kichipatupig, which is very literal, and it means the place of two bays or double water. So in this photograph, this was taken in the Grand Marais area, and it is a number of family members in the Chippewa City area in front of like a more traditional style of house. And you can see that they're surrounded by woods. In fact, the Ojibwe name for Chippewa City is this, Nishkwa Kwansing. And if we were all in a room together, I would have everybody say it together. So everyone say this in your living room, Nishkwa Kwansing, or your kitchen or your porch or wherever you are. Nishkwa Kwansing, and that literally means at the edge of the forest. This photograph too is very interesting. The two people who are seated are Mr. and Mrs. Shingibis, and standing is Joe Caribou and a member of his family. I don't know if that is Joe Caribou's wife or not, but this was taken when Francis Densmore, the famous anthropologist, visited Chippewa City and Grand Portage. At the time, she asked Mr. Shingibis about traditional hunting songs. So she said, well, what do you sing when you're out hunting? And Shingibis infamously said, we didn't sing then, we kept still. So I wish I could hear you all laughing because that's one of my favorite stories. I mentioned that I started on the research for the book a long time ago. And my first interview was with this man, George Morrison. It was back in 1987 that my sister and I visited him at his home at Red Rocks in Grand Portage. And I see Roxanne and Briand are here, so I'm really honored to see you, and thanks for joining us. He made us coffee that day, and we had brought some chocolate chip cookies, and we spent the better part of the afternoon with him. He boasted that he could make a good imitation cafe au lait, and the coffee was delicious. George was very generous with stories about the Morrison family, which is one of the main families who lived at Chippewa City, and the Morrisons were very involved in the community and in the church. And I asked George this question, among others. I said, "Was your grandmother proud of the old ways?" And he said, "Sure she was. There's a certain pride in every nationality. Each has special qualities and uniqueness in their own way. But I felt I wanted to deliberately go away from that and go to art school in Minneapolis, to a completely different world. There are a lot of Indians in the Twin Cities, becoming white men in a sense by adapting everything, thinking, education, white art. But underneath, one can never leave that. There is something inside that always comes through. Gradually, the landscape themes crept through into my art. The indirect influences of the land, water, and wood. I have never tried to prove that I was Indian by doing baskets or painting feathers." And because of George's wisdom and generosity of spirit, there are many, many great stories in Walking the Old Road that George shared. One of the places that gets its own chapter is St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church. It's the only building that's left in Chippewa City. And we're lucky to be able to visit it in warm summer days or warm fall days. You can go inside and see where the people worshiped, and the church that was built by the hands of the community. And George's younger brother, Michael, was another person I interviewed several times for Walking the Old Road. And he did his own writing and history about the church. And I share some of those details in the chapter about St. Francis Xavier, also known as the Chippewa Church. So there's the interior of the church, and it looks, very much like that still. And the photo on the left is my great-grandmother's sister, Teresa Anaquat. And you can see the church behind her, and a house in the same style as the church. It was built right around the same time, and she's holding a little baby. And based on the snow cover, I'd say it's about this time of year. And it's likely that the baby was going to be baptized or had just been baptized at the church, based on the fancy clothing. So St. Francis Xavier, it's amazing that we have that as a reference point. And I go to and from it a lot in the book. Another person who is very, very generous with their stories about Chippewa City is Jim Whipson. He was born in Chippewa City in 1918 and a member of Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and also a World War II veteran. And he lived there with his grandmother, Kate. And you can see Kate on the right. She's wearing a fur coat, and Jim is to her left. He's got, that's his mom, Patsy. I'm sorry, not Patsy. Patsy's the little girl with the doll, who is Bob Swanson's mother. And this photograph came from the Patsy Droulard Swanson collection, taken in Chippewa City. The man is Martin Droulard, and the woman is Ida Frost, Jim Whipson's mom. And there's little Jim in his boots. And the title of the book is from something that Jim said when I interviewed him. And I'll just share that with you right now. He used to walk the path between Chippewa City and Grand Marais with his grandmother, Kate Frost. And he said, when I was a little boy, her and I used to walk that little old road. It was a mile from Chippewa City to Grand Marais. To us, we thought it was a long ways. Just to show you, my grandma thought it was a long ways. She'd even take a little lunch along. And halfway between Chippewa City and Grand Marais, we'd sit on the little cliff and have our little lunch. Then we'd journey the rest of the way to Grand Marais. Every weekend, I think we'd walk to town, and all these white people seen us walking around Grand Marais, and they got to know us real good. In fact, a lot of people got to say, hey, Katie, how are you? And oh, you're here with your little grandson. And they all talked to us. And my grandmother used to love ice cream, and we'd stop at a little restaurant there. I think they called it Lesage's restaurant. And we'd go in there and have our little ice cream, and she really enjoyed it. So everybody in Grand Marais knew Kate Frost and her little grandson, who was me, Jimmy. And Jim spoke of that path to and from town as having a proper name, the Old Road. And so much of our human history is built around the construction of roads, both literally and figuratively. And so roads not only join our communities together, but they also serve as sort of conduits between worlds. And I use that tool a lot throughout the book when I started out the path in 1987, and have come now back around to share the book with you all. And so I thought tonight, for the purposes of this being an introduction for people who have yet to read it, or are interested in digging into it a little bit, I wanted to put together some important themes that I think have value in the story of Chippewa City. In order to walk in a good way down the old road, it's really important to, I think, keep the story in a good historical context, and really to best honor the stories and the people who lived in Chippewa City, and the Grand Marais Anishinaabe, the Grand Marais people who lived here and live here. I think it's important that we all dig in a bit. So one of the things that sort of carries the story a lot are the memories of people who grew up there. And so I always say, if you want to get a sense of place, or really absorb yourself in the history of a place, you need to know what the daily life was like there. And I'm so fortunate that so many of the elders that shared their stories really got into the nitty gritty. And we're really lucky. I believe all of that has value. And so just a couple of of people who are on this slide. In the center is Dora Casamas. She grew up in Chippewa City. You can see her right there with the church steeple just behind her. And Dora Casamas, she was interviewed for a project that the Grand Portage National Monument did. And so we're fortunate to have that transcript, which I did call on for the book. She had a lot of wisdom, and she remembers a lot about her dad, who was a trapper, and what that was like for her. The picture on the right side of the slide is Dorothy Johansson, and maiden name Drulard. And she also was her grandmother is a Morrison, so she grew up in Chippewa City, and this is in fact her standing on the family porch there as a little girl. And she shared this photograph with me back when I interviewed her in 1991, along with some other family photos. The photograph on the far left was taken on New Year's Day in Grand Marais. And the New Year's Day tradition is something that has gone by the wayside, but I do share more about it in the book because everybody remembers the New Year's Day tradition where you would go from house to house and people would give you sweets, and you would put treats in like a flour sack or on a plate. And so this photograph is just breathtaking that we have this in our local historical society's collection. And it is a group of Chippewa City kids all dressed up for New Year's Day. And so when you're reading through, just think about what life was like for kids at Chippewa City, and maybe the ways that it was different for them than it was for non-Indian kids or even kids that were on the reservation. An important distinction, I think, about Chippewa City is that it was an off-reservation village, and the life off-reservation was very different. And I touch on that in a number of ways. And, you know, I'll mention that again as we get further into our themes. This is a very big topic that I write about in the chapter about two cultures coinciding here in Grand Marais and on the North Shore at the turn of the century. And we're fortunate to have the transcripts of the woman on the right. Her name is Catherine Kirby Jones. And she was the wife of the first doctor to serve the North Shore. And she recorded much of the minutia of her life in her journals. And I called on that a lot when I was trying to get a feel for the interactions of cultures at that time. And in a diary entry from 1899, Mrs. Dr. Jones described one of her Anishinaabe neighbors. And here's what she wrote. An old Indian, a pagan, Cognishwe or Longbody, called on us. His hair is long and black, and he is a pure type of Indian. He lost his wife and buried her near their wigwam, and for a year or more, he spent the greater portion of his time by her grave, communing with her spirit. He's a favorite among the whites, and they all help him. We gave him a pair of glasses, and he was greatly delighted that he could see pictures. Then he asked for a needle and thread and showed us he could thread it now, but not before. He can't speak English, so he had to make us understand by motions. The way that Mrs. Jones's relationship to Cognishway takes shape is really revealing in terms of what was happening with Indigenous people here on the North Shore and all throughout the US and Canada at the same time. The Anishinaabe people of the North Shore were subjected to the same government decrees and treaties and government acts that other tribes were being subjected to. And as the friendship between these two people plays out, I think it's very telling. And so as you're reading the chapter about that talks about prejudice and conflict or friendship between European settlers and Anishinaabe people, try to put yourself in each of their shoes and see where you end up. I think that's a very important approach when you have both voices like that together. Another recurring thread throughout the book is the role of women in the story. Kate Frost, Jim Whipson's grandmother, is, if it were a novel, she would be one of the main characters. The story of Kate Frost and the other women in the book really tell the story of Chippewa City and the history of the place. And I think everyone who reads it will maybe learn something from the women's voices and the bits of history that involve women at that time and place. I didn't purposefully set out to focus on women, and there are indeed a lot of men's voices in the book as well. But what ended up happening when the book was in process is that the role of women seemed to be, I guess, give a greater sense of connection to the land. So like in the story of Kate Frost and Katie's Point and her ownership of land, like on the left, Philomene Evans, who that photograph was taken in Grand Portage. Philomene's experience making a living when the local economy was shifting from logging and trapping to a more tourist-based economy. You see the women become players in the local economy, almost as a way of carrying through tradition as well as making a living. And so Philomene Evans on the left, on the right is Catherine Boyer Scott. That photograph was taken at their, the Scott family home, which is sort of, it's in the Crawford area. And she is working on some fishing nets there. And then at the center is great grandma Elizabeth Anaquat in Chippewa City. She was born and raised in Chippewa City and raised 12 kids there. So the role of women, something to really ponder and pay attention to. I think that will be an enlightening look at history, I hope. This photograph is of the Drulard Anaquat sugar bush with Kate Frost, and that's little Jim Whipson with his hand up in front of his face. And some of the Drulard Anaquat relatives. And Jim shared in detail what it was like going to Sugar Bush with his grandma. And I did not edit it. I did not edit that in the book. I shared that in its entirety. It's important historically, but it's also, I think, important for people to connect to the fact that Anishinaabe culture not only played a role in the past in terms of viability here on the North Shore, but also sort of paved the way for our life as a tourist town now. And so in thinking through the book and the sections about local economy and how people made a living, I think it's important to think about the different ways that Anishinaabe people did shape the past. And then I think, one of the most common treatments of Indigenous history is to think about the people as being in the dusty past, like stored away in some, photo album with torn corners and and blurry images. And when I set out to write Walking the Old Road, it was fully my intention to honor the past, but never write about the Anishinaabe as if the people aren't still here. And that is, I've done a number of talks now around the book and about the book. And what I've found in general is that Minnesotans, no matter where you're from in Minnesota, don't really know a lot about Indigenous history, the ground that we all live on and walk on and work on. I'm always a little surprised. And so that's an aspect of the book that was intentional. I'm really proud of that. Proud of that. I guess, what's the word? I guess I'm just proud of that effort. But I'd love to hear what readers think. Was I successful? What is the feeling you get? Was the case presented that made you think differently about how Anishinaabe people shape the past, present, and future? And try to apply it to your own lives if you can. It's just it's a big, important point. Another, I guess, I guess it's a sticky topic for some people, is the idea of cultural appropriation. And when I dig into the local economy and the transition from logging and trapping and other forms of extraction to a more tourism-based economy, there's a real shift from when things were made by hand locally to when things were bought overseas or elsewhere and imported in. And cultural appropriation is just another way of annihilating Indigenous people. And I do take it on in the book in a gentle way. But I don't think there's anything more striking than these two images together. And so I hope to have a robust conversation about this in the second session, because after people have read the book and formulated your own perceptions about that here locally, I think there's some good work that could be done out of the conversations, or a conversation about that within the context of walking the old road. So what you're seeing here is a handmade hooked rug by Lucy Caribou. Lucy Caribou's house was very near where the Free Church is currently on 7 here in Grand Marais. There are some really big trees next to a blue house that's still there. And I believe that those really big trees were there when Lucy Caribou lived there too. And Lucy made a living doing handmade rugs and hooked rugs and birch bark curios to sell in shops, along with her sister Philomene. And then on the right is a Grand Marais calendar. And that photo comes from the Cook County Historical Society collection. The prevailing theme, I think, as the book works its way through, is learning about the history of the land and the land's connection to people, and how does our relationship with land play a role in the present and history, and the relationship between the two cultures, Anishinaabe and European. I don't want to give away any spoilers here. So we'll save that for the second session after people have read it, or for anyone who wants to talk about this more. But the image you see here, this is in the book and it's in black and white. And in a way, I understand why the book is in all black and white. But when there are color images like this, I try to share them as often as possible because it has so much more impact. So what you see is a real estate sign that was posted in Chippewa City, and it says "Buju," which is hello or greeting in Ojibwe. Chippewa City, now without its original Americans. And I tell the story of that sign and the land associated with it in the book. I didn't start out with this sign image. It came to me as I was working my way through. And it is a very, I think, shocking and stark representation of where we've all come from. And so when you're reading through the book and you're reading about land transactions and things, there is some minutia in there in terms of, you know, how many times land changes hands. And I tried to, you know, not really give a lot of land abstract terminology or numbers or anything, but there's one piece of land that I do look at very closely, and it tells the story of Chippewa City pretty well. And so there are so many more stories and tales and aspects of the Chippewa City story. And for every person who has a memory of it, it creates a multitude of new stories. And that's why the pursuit of history is never ending. It never ends. The story of Chippewa City doesn't end. It doesn't have a beginning, middle, or end. It's on a continuum. It's on a circle. And so one of the most important things that I've learned in the process of writing about history is that indeed all of our stories are alive, and they're growing and thriving things, and should all be cared for and nurtured just like any other living things. Misayu, with that, I'll turn it over to questions that people have.
You're welcome to put questions in the chat, or if you'd like, you can unmute yourself and talk for a second.
Hi, Stacy. My name is Danielle Campbell. It's Omamaki, but that's my spirit name. I'm trying to see if I could buy the book, and I noticed that it's from the Minnesota University of Minnesota, isn't it?
U of M Press.
U of M Press, and it says it's back ordered until 12/11. I was just wondering if you have like ebooks or any like way that I can read the book before the next session. In the next session, you're going to be like delving deeper into the topic of the book as well.
Yes. I'll go deeper into the themes and the open-ended questions, and that'll be more of I think more of a discussion around those themes. So I'm counting on people to engage with the book. Kelsey, can you put the links in the chat?
Yep.
She did some research, and there are 2 local sources where you can order the book right now while it's waiting to be reprinted. And there's also an audiobook. I don't know if you like audiobooks, but I narrate the audiobook, and that Kelsey has the link for that too.
Okay. And do you have a like a ebook about it as well? Because I would like to do both the audiobook and the ebook, because I know that you said there's pictures in there.
Yes. The ebook is available through, if you order the audiobook, I believe you get the ebook as a package, I believe.
Oh, sweet. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Miigwech.
I'm looking forward to reading it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. So the Grand Marais, is that the I know that now, I mean, there used to be plenty of well, how would I say that? You know how the reservations and the people that lived within the area, they all shifted during the fur trading era and the logging era.
Mhm.
What reservation is like closest to you guys right now in Chippewa City?
Grand Portage.
Grand Portage. And are most of these people that in the book that you talked with from Grand Portage?
Yes. And I do, I sort of migrate the people from the east and then into the area. And as you know, the Anishinaabe people lived a seasonal lifestyle. And so the idea of a town or village really wasn't a thing. There were, fishing encampments and ricing encampments and hunting and trapping camps, and the people would move around a huge area. And so when the reservation borders were set up or assigned in the Treaty of 1847, the people still moved around. And there were Dame totemic groups that lived all along the North Shore, including at Grand Marais. And the remnants of Chippewa City are some of the Caribou clan and the people who never lived on the reservation until later. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
I have a question, Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Zoom delay. I'll just ask mine really quick. You grew up here, and did you graduate from the high school here?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And I was wondering when you were talking about oh my God, come on, Mr. Morrison's stories. If you, like, when he was telling you the story about wanting to leave to sort of, you know, go on his own journey, if you related to that at all, if you had, I mean, this is kind of a personal question, but if you had a similar journey.
Well, absolutely. This was a tough place to grow up, especially if you didn't fit into a certain box or boxes. So, and interestingly, another, besides our commonality with Chippewa City family and a tie to Chippewa City, I was actually in art school in Minneapolis at the College of Art and Design when I interviewed George Morrison for a school project. So the idea of moving away from home to fully appreciate home is something that I can relate to a lot.
I was sort of wondering if it helped shape your book a little bit, the way that it helped shape his art a little bit.
Absolutely. It's a love story for the North Shore in some ways.
I believe Naomi had a question.
I just wanted to thank you so much for your book. It's just so beautifully written. And I was just struck that knowing you over the last 4 years through CCLAP and WTAP, I just didn't know what you were working on in your research and your writing and all of your history. And as I read, I just felt so ignorant but so grateful. So I'm hoping that maybe this is more for our next session, but I'm hoping that we can have more conversations about where can we keep learning more? What can we do? I was fascinated by your comment just now about, with cultural appropriation. What can we do maybe to, it sounded like possibly supporting Native artists. And I'm just looking forward to hearing more about what we can learn and how we can learn, and what can be done to, there's nothing that can be done. But what more can we do to learn and to, I don't know.
I don't know, Lisa. I mean, thanks for the question and for your nice words. I think it is about words in a lot of ways. Right now, words are in a bit of a crisis. Truthful words and words of honor and words of respect are sort of hard to find these days. And I think talking about it, and certainly I will bring a big book list to the second session, because there are so many people who say it so well, and I think will help you answer that question, Lee.
I have a question, Stacy. This is
Okay.
Hi, Stacy. I will echo the last comment about loving your book and being really grateful for it. I imagine as I was going through it, I was struck with the thought, because it seems like in the beginning it's really wanting to tell this history, but I'm wondering kind of what it did as you kept going and kept learning these stories and writing the book for like your own sense of self. Like, what was that like for you and your journey?
When I started out researching the history of Chippewa City, I knew very little about it, or even about the Anaquat history, which is on my dad's side of the family. And growing up in Grand Marais, and being disconnected from Grand Portage, I mean, we weren't raised with the kind of cultural connection, I think, that the people who grew up in Grand Portage have. It's harder when you live apart, when your context is and your land base is different. And the process of writing the book was cathartic for me. And the metaphor of the road really helped me a lot, sort of stay on track and serve as a point of discovery. And initially, when I wrote the history, it was for an academic thesis that I did for UMD for my master's degree. And when I brought the topic to Eric Anderson at U of M Press, he encouraged me to write from a more personal perspective, as more of a personal historical narrative approach. And as a trained academic researcher, that was really hard for me to do. But once I got the hang of it, then it was easy. And so I appreciate being able to have people experience that journey, with me, and then the other stories in the book. It was a voyage of discovery. I mean, that's so cliched, but it definitely contributed to my own sense of self and my love affair with the North Shore, and also made me really proud of my family in a new and different way.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank
So
you.
for everybody, we have a couple more questions, one in the chat. You're welcome to stay a little longer. But I just want to let you know that we'll send you a follow-up email with some resources and also kind of a reading guide. So look for that in your email. But I encourage you to hang out a little bit longer and ask your questions. I want to read one off from someone. I am curious about the creative writing process you use. Since you mentioned interviews and collecting stories from many years ago, did you eventually just sit down and put it all together? Or did you write some each day, each week, once you decided to write it as a book?
The writing process was like a gutting of my academic paper. I eviscerated it, and I kept certain parts of it that I felt were necessary to the story, and thinking back on it, I sort of always knew that it would start and end at St. Francis Xavier Church. I just didn't know how we were going to get there. And so when I was writing it, I wrote the smaller sections that you'll see in the book. I really have a fun time with subtitles. I love writing a section and then pulling a subtitle out of it. It's really dorky, but I really like it. And that helped me a lot too. Any other questions?
Anybody want to say any? Otherwise, anybody want to unmute themselves? You're welcome to type into the chat section as well. Somebody asked about you doing the radio show. Did you share some of this in the radio?
Yes, many years ago, before there was a book, I put together a series for WTIP called Walking the Old Road, the story of Chippewa City and the Grand Marais, Ojibwe, or Chippewa, or and they're on the TIP website. And you'll be able to hear the original audio from some of the people that I interviewed, which is a great gift to have that, especially since they came off like some really old and moldy cassette tapes. The audio quality is not 21st century because it was recorded on a really old recorder at the time. I had no intention of using it in that way. So some patience is required at times to understand what's being said. But yeah, thanks for the question.
Wonderful. I'll send any links I have out as well in the resources. I feel like it's very Minnesotan to have everybody be quiet and keep listening. So please encourage you to unmute yourself and ask those questions that are burning in your mind as you're listening to Stacy give us great information. Or any questions you might have as you're thinking about reading the book. Is there something you want to know about what you should be thinking about as you read it? Or perspective?
I'm sure it's covered in the book, but a lot of the families from Chippewa City, did they, since there's no buildings there now, did everybody move out to certain other areas, or are they all still in descendants in Grand Marais area, or?
A mixture. Yeah. There were a number of government acts that encouraged people to move on. And also some world events like the Great Depression and the World Wars that broke up the remaining community. And I do tell that story in the book, the decline of the community. As far as I know, the only remaining structures left are the church, and there's one house that doesn't, someone still lives in that house, and the house was built around the original Chippewa City house. But I think that's just two buildings. And Chippewa City as a community or village at its largest point was about 200 families, according to the memories of some people. So it was pretty big, for a while. And then it, for various reasons, economic and the land, what happened with the land all played a part. And again, that is the plight of an off-reservation village where the land base isn't secure like it is on the reservation.
I don't know that I have a question. I've just started reading the book, and I've really appreciated while you start talking about some of the treaties, living in Grand Marais, walking around town, I'm now picturing all these parts of town with names on them that I didn't know before. So that's been really eye-opening, and I don't know, it's just changing the way I'm walking around in Grand Marais. So I've really appreciated that, and I look forward to reading more and talking more about it next time.
Cool. Thanks, Anna.
Well, any questions before I close this out for the evening?
All right, I have one more. But I don't want to be a spoiler either. The story of how one of the last Ojibwe people, how they lost the land, is really striking. And I'm just astonished. But I'm wondering if Naomi really wants to know this too, because I was talking to her about it. But I mean, the Lloyd K. Johnson Foundation is related. And I feel like they've done so much good work in this area, but it was really hard to read about his father and or grandfather, I should say, I think. How do you reconcile really good things happening with really awful things that happened?
Yeah. That part of the land history came via Jim Whipson, and Jim was very clear about what happened and how his grandma lost her land on the shore. He really, really wanted to tell me that story. And I felt and feel a great responsibility to him. And Jim has, passed on, Jim Ipan. And I feel, I was sort of terrified of telling that part of the story, knowing that there could be very real repercussions for the North Shore. But ultimately, I did speak with the head of the Lloyd K. Johnson Foundation as I was writing the book.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was only fair of them to know what was, going to be written, and the evidence that I had, and that being solid, not just word of mouth, but also actual documents. So she was extremely gracious, and she's very well spoken, very well intended, and the history was not known to her or to the Lloyd K. Johnson board currently. So, but she said in a very eloquent way that she did not believe in hiding the truth.
Yeah.
And that their mission, it's not their mission, and it has never been their mission. And so there was a bit of healing done there, I think, just by reaching out.
Yeah.
And, being fair about it.
It's hard. Well,
and another major theme in the book is who gets to tell the story. And one of my prime motivators was letting the people speak.
Yeah.
And it's a huge responsibility to everyone, I think, to honor their stories and their experiences. And we can show our appreciation, I think, by choosing our words carefully and doing what we can to let every voice be heard.
I love that it's kind of the end of the night, right? Like let's, and we'll read the stories, right? And we'll get together next time, hopefully. You'll be able to join us next time and hopefully continue these conversations, talk about how these are impacting us now, as well as talking about what we have taken away from, especially with the reading guide, key pieces we might be pondering about, especially the nuances, right? When you read, you have these like dying questions you never get to ask the author or find out the details about, and you get to have all those opportunities in the future. So we want to say thank you, Stacy. This is really, for us, so pivotal and important to have these conversations in our community, especially when we talk about history. I think it's important to talk about the current time frame and continue the conversations now to not make them be a past conversation and be a current piece for us. So I encourage you, if you have suggestions for future things, to let me know. Stacy is allowing you to send her emails. So if you have something that you just could not ask us publicly, but you just wanted to know, there is more room for that conversation. And then please consider thinking about questions, writing those down and keeping them as you're working along so we can have those for next time. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can send them to my email. Also, I will be doing that follow-up email probably tomorrow. So look for it there. And again,
So with the email,
big heartfelt thanks.
with the emails, is that going to be in the handouts?
Yep, we'll send that. Look for your email for everything.
All right. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you also, Kelsey. It was
You're welcome.
great. Thank you guys.
Miigwech, and I look forward to our follow-up session
Me too.
and hearing everyone's feedback and your thoughts.
Thank you, everyone. On this chilly night, I hope you can tuck in, have some cozy reading for the next month, and we look forward to seeing you then. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. Good night. Hey, Stacy, are you still there? Or are you gone?
She's still here,
I'm
but
here.
yeah.
Can I ask you something else?
Okay.
Well, I teach preschool children, and I felt like something I'm really missing is a connection to the people who lived here long before me. You know, I have a piece of land 1 mile west of town. I looked for it on the maps, and it's not in the sugar bush or anything. But I don't know how to tell this story for children.
Well, that would be, someone suggested that it would be a good story written from the perspective of a kid
Yeah.
in Chippewa City. And I guess I'd have to really think that through. And because I think that is a good idea. And I'm not, you know, I don't have a teaching educational type background, so I would need help. I'd need a teacher to help me figure that out.
Well, maybe we can talk more, but I would love to. I know I had imagined maybe a visit from someone to come into the woods with us at play school, or, I mean, a book would be great. They love, I mean, I've read them other stories from other people in other areas, and they love it. They love to look out at Kichigumi and read stories. about fireflies. But anyways, I'll think about that more and think about something hands-on or experiential too for the children.
Okay. And I'll think through if there are books that are for preschoolers or younger
Yeah.
children that I can add to my source list for next
I would
time.
love that. Yeah. Thank you. I dominated the question. Sorry. I've just been dying to ask you so many things. So.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I love questions, and it's really cool to see everybody too.
And I tried to make a family tree while I was reading, and I want to see if it's right, but I lost it somewhere and I couldn't quite get it all together. So.
Yeah, that.
And then you wrote about it at the end. Their sisters marry sisters, and they name, or sisters marry brothers and name their children after their aunts and after each other. So, anyways, I'll look forward to next time when everyone else has read it too. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, Naomi. Nice to see you.
And Sue, are you Tracy's mom? Yeah,
Hi, Sue.
the family affair. Well, perfect. I just wanted
I
to
love
check in
it.
with you.
Yes, I am Lisa's mom and Naomi's grandma and Anders' grandma. Hi, Anders. Hi, buddy.
My kid thinks that every time we go on Zoom that the grandparents have to be on them. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the truth, right? Any workshop.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I've been reading a lot of children's fiction, more third, fourth, fifth grade, and I haven't found very much about Minnesota except Louise Urge's work, but a lot of that is the fur trade and period, and I'm looking for more current stuff. I have found some, but not much about Minnesota. You find, on the Trail of Tears, there's a lot there. There's, some of the stuff on Crazy Horse, but there's, I have found a real hard time finding children's literature on Native Americans.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good observation. And the good news is there are a multitude of amazing Anishinaabe writers working, right here in our region. And I will do a little bit of outreach. I don't have kids, so I'm not well versed on what's out there for kid literature, but I do, I know people who know some people.
It seems like a lot of the children's picture books, they cover a lot of the myths. So we're talking, 100 years ago, and there's different flowers or different kind of myths, which are great stories, but it's all in the past.
I haven't found very much that honors the present.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have to say, now this is Native American Month in schools, and my two granddaughters had assignments, and they were to look at and read the story of the Jingle Dancer. Okay, and great. That's good. That's culturally, but it's still so in the past. I mean, that's not totally past because, jingle dancers are present. There are, and the
Very
powwow.
much so. Yeah, and I would say, go to a powwow and seek out. I don't know where you live, but there are 11 Native reservations in Minnesota, so chances are you live pretty
close to one. Yeah.
So explore your neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to really put the responsibility on the Native American community to educate me. You know what I mean?
No, I'm
That's
not
my
saying
responsibility, but
yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying find out if there's a museum on the reservation that has a bookstore. Find out about
the Shakopee has a really nice museum and bookstore. in the
Yeah.
Shakopee, I can never say the full name.
Midwankin, yeah.
Mdewakan.
Yeah, and that's Dakota.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But anyway,
Yeah.
Great conversations, you guys.
There's just, like I said, there's a multitude of artists, writers, musicians who are making great art. And so I'll try to compile some of that for our next session.
okay. I'm on the list for The Heartbeat of Wounded Knee. I'm kind of excited about that one by David Troyer.
Troyer, yeah.
Troyer. I listened to his podcast and he was talking about the vibrant Native American community that's out there, alive and present, so I thought, oh, good.
Yeah.
And I had asked him, we were on thing, and I asked him a question about, but where's the children's books for right now? And he said, oh, there's lots, and then there was no name, and then there was, I couldn't, I don't know, there was fantasy books, which is good. Fantasy books are okay, right, Naomi? But we're kind of looking for, I don't know. Another issue is that, like the book, The Diary of a Part-Time Indian.
Mhm.
Did you read that one?
Yep.
Alex Sherman.
Mhm.
So I struggle.
Sherman Alexie, yeah.
Sherman Alexie, okay, good. I struggle with, the depression of the poverty and the alcoholism and the abuse. I can understand that as a teen book, but I struggle with that for children books that are a little bit younger. And I know that's a reality for some Native Americans. However, there's got to be more than that.
Well, that book is for teens, isn't it?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
for young
it is.
adults. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of a scary book. I
Well,
mean, I would have a
there's-
hard time recommending it to Naomi. She's 14.
Okay. Yeah. I have given that as gifts to teens in my
You
life.
have, huh? Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but there's hard truths.
Yes.
And especially when you're talking about real history.
Yes.
And I don't believe in sweeping it under the rug or making everything seem rosy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the wait list for Apple in the Middle, and I'm kind of excited about that one. It's out of North Dakota. It's a new. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but
Oh,
I saw the author speak at an event.
Oh, you did? Okay.
A Zoom event. Yeah.
Okay, because that one seems like there's something in North Dakota press or whatever that is trying to bring contemporary Native American issues, and it's the first of 3 or something. And I'm the only thing, I'm in Hennepin County, and there's like 10, 15 copies, and they're all checked out, and they're not due till December. So I think a librarian has checked them all out and has them on display or something, and I won't get them for a while. I used to work in the library, so I know that's how they do it.
Okay.
But, I think, oh, why are they all checked out? And I realized, oh, okay. But
Well, I think we'll have to save some more questions for Stacy next time.
yeah, poor Stacy, we'll let you go. Okay.
Enjoy her
Okay.
night.
All
Thank
right.
you,
So
Stacy.
much.
I'll be in touch.
Good
Bye,
night.
Lisa.
Good night,
Bye, Naomi.
guys.
Night, night.